Our science segment today, we're going to take a closer look at the so-called bunker plan that's been launched in Berlin in response to fears of a possible widespread conflict in Europe. The plan aims to identify all shelters or bunkers that are capable of identifying the population in the event of an attack. To discuss this, our science editor, Julia Seeger, is with me. And Julia, why are we talking about this right now?
So the information actually came from a press conference, a spokesperson of the German Interior Ministry that announced the launch of this so-called bunker plan. Now, what this plan is that Berlin is actually drawing up a list of public and private buildings that could serve as a bunker if one day it's needed, and that includes car parks and underground train stations and state buildings. And the idea is to then draw up a digital directory of all of those emergency shelters for people to be able to search that if it's one day needed. Now, currently, Germany has 579 emergency shelters with a total capacity of 480,000. That's not a lot compared to its population of 83 million. And that's why also the German Civil Protection Authority a couple of days ago asked for the construction of several new shelters that would be able to accommodate more than 5,000 people each. Now, the launch of this plan was just several days ago. It was on Monday, but actually Berlin has been preparing for this for quite a while. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2020, it immediately halted and stopped selling fortified structure that it had in its possession. Since 2005, they had been selling those bunkers to people, and when the war started, they ended that immediately.
Okay, so that's Germany, but we also have news coming out of Sweden and Finland. People there, the government there, encouraging their nationals to prepare for a possible conflict as well.
That's right. Finland has launched a website, but Sweden went so far as to send this 32-page leaflet that goes into the details of how to prepare for a crisis or a war. And it's really well done. It includes practical tips on how to cope with a lack of sanitation, a lack of heating, or a lack of refrigeration as well. They give locations of bomb shelters and how to stockpile on food and water. And they also give you advice on how to identify reliable information sources. And here on page 2, for instance, they say, if Sweden is attacked, we will never surrender, so any suggestion to the contrary is false. And that's one of the issues when you're in a crisis, is to know which information to listen to. And they advise to prepare a survival kit. That's actually what the Red Cross has been saying for quite a while, but more having to do with coping with natural disasters. But it's always the same survival kit with, for instance, identity papers, warm and waterproof clothing, food for several days, we say in general for 72 hours, flashlights. And I think also what's very important, what people forget, is having a radio. So this is quite a sophisticated radio. It's solar powered and it has a crank behind it. But all you need is actually a radio, a battery radio that can really pick up on short waves for you to be able to keep in touch with authorities if at one point you're isolated and you just don't have access to a phone. The brochure also explains on how to behave during an air raid, how to recognize the different sirens and what to do, and how to take cover as well.
What about here in France, Julia?
Well, here in France, the government's website provides a little bit of information, but nothing having to do with war precisely. In terms of shelters, France has about 1,000 military nuclear shelters, and knowing that 300 to 400 of them are actually privately owned, that's actually nothing compared to the other side of the spectrum, which is Switzerland. They have 9,000 for their population. That's 110% of protection with those bunkers. Now, for the general population here in France, we still have bunkers, for instance, dating back to World War II. Some of them, and actually most of them, are underneath very important monuments here in Paris, underneath the Elysee Palace. There's a commandment post that the president actually still uses. There's a huge network also of shelters underneath the train station of Paris Gare de l'Est. But I think what's important here is just to understand that everything I've just said, it's true for war, but it's also true for any type of emergency, any type of natural disaster as well. And perhaps the most important point is to at least think about what would be your plan and where you could actually take shelter if something were to happen.
All right, thanks very much indeed. Julia Seeger for us there.